I got some friends with
Around there are all the magazines or back numbers of magazines I've done pieces for. The bottom two shelves are the books I've written in various editions, editions for certain years and editions for certain languages. That Native American arrow up there, that was from a Native American guy I briefly had a brew club in Galena, Illinois. This is my schedule here. The coloured, pretty much everything that's written on there is a foreign trip somewhere. Early in the year I was in Turkey, then Finland a couple of times, and Prime Minister of Ireland, Bertie Ahern.
How long ago would that have been?
A couple of years ago, I suppose. Which edition is that? What does it say on the front? Has it got to...
It says 2006 inside.
Let me look at the front there. Yeah, that's the most up-to-date version.
You have actually some changes still.
Between the original 5th edition, that's the kind of 5th edition Mark II. I'm very proud of that book. I'm proud of lots of things I've done, but you know, I guess you should be proud of everything, because if you're not proud of it, I guess you're fucked up. But it's that book has begun to develop almost the quality of a novel, really, because
I just said it's more like a textbook, actually. The feel of it, the heft of it.
Well, that's true, but you know, it starts off. I now have the intro bit where I'm in the Netherlands and getting very bored with Heineken, and somebody says go down to the Catholic provinces in the south. There are more small breweries there, and they also have like a sort of pre-Lenten carnival. So, and the year that happened, John Lennon was in bed with Yoko Ono in the Amsterdam Hilton. Yellow Submarine was top of the charts, and the Prime Minister of the Netherlands was Jelle, Jelle. So there was a satirical political song called Yellow Submarine, and down in the carnival, the pre-Lenten carnival, they're all singing this, and you know they wear costumes, or they're all wearing John Lennon face masks. So this guy wearing a John Lennon face mask, he gave me this dark brown beer, and I drank it, and wow, it was strong, and bam, you know, and he looked at me and said, "Did you like that?" I sure did, yeah. He said, "If you like that, you're in the wrong country. All you want to do is take a bus from the town square, go south. In 2 kilometres you'll be in Belgium." And I knew nothing about Belgium back then, so I took the bus, and you know, it changed my life. One weekend in Belgium changed my life. So I made that's like the sort of prequel to the book now, and there's a chapter later on, toward the end of the book, where I'm in Colorado, and there's a new brewery opened in one of the mountain resorts. What was that? Breckenridge, Myra Breckenridge, Breckenridge, Colorado. They just opened the first Breckenridge brew pub, and somebody's going to take me up there to take a look at it. A guy called Jeff LeBeche. We're driving up into the mountains. We cross the Continental Divide, and there's like a place where you can have a sandwich and drink and take pictures and stuff. And Jeff gets this bottle out of his trunk of his car. It's a Chimay bottle. Oh, I said, okay, that's all right. He said, oh, it's not Chimay, it's my home brew. Just, you know, the Chimay bottle resealables. Okay, so we had this beer, and he said, you know, Michael, I want to discuss something with you. I love Belgian beer. What do you think about the idea of a brewery in America making Belgian beer? I'd like to start a microbrewery specialising in Belgian beer. I said to him, Jeff, great idea, but it's too soon. Don't even think about it. Forget it. Well, of course, he opened it. It became still, I think, the fastest growing brewery in the United States.
You Belgian.
So he sensibly ignored my advice. I always get pissed at people ignoring my advice, but he's quite sensible to ignore it. So that makes a nice sort of bookend to the story, you know. I do a lot of editorial thinking about my books, you know, because I've been a magazine editor, been a newspaper editor, I've edited a TV chat show.
TV chat show.
David Frost program. I was the editor of for a time, and yeah, so I've done a lot of stuff, and I bring sometimes when I feel I'm maybe sort of using a sledgehammer to crack peanuts, but sometimes I bring my experience in other fields of other areas of media, bring them to bear in what I do in writing about drink.
Well, you've been writing for years and years and years, and
Well, I've been writing since about 14.
yeah.
I was at sort of high school when I had my first stuff published. In fact, the first thing I published was...
In a high school publication, or in some...
Well, the first thing was in a high school publication, because the first thing I published was a report of a rugby league game written in classical ancient Latin in the rhythm of iambic pentameter, with some rather Stoppardian linguistic jokes in it, and that won the award for the best writing of that year. And somebody said to me, you know, you do this stuff for a living. I said, what, write reports of rugby league games in classical Latin? He said, no, but you could be a journalist, you know. And I said, well, okay, that solves that then. So I'll be a journalist. And I started sending bits to the local paper. So everybody who died in this town got an obituary in the local paper. Not a death announcement, but a story about them. So you'd go to the widow. Very often she said the coffin would still be in the front room. She said, would you like a look at him, love? This is a slightly sort of off-putting beginning to one's career. And so he said, well, yes, thank you. So tell me, Mrs. O'Connor, you've always lived in Soothill? Yes. And your husband too? Yes. So I'm guessing that you went to St. Joseph's Church? Yes. So your husband, was he an Ulster boy when he was a lad? No. Well, St. Joseph's Church has a good rugby league team. Did he play for the team? No. Did he support the team? No. Did he support Dewsbury or Batley? No. Well, he worked at Shawcross Colliery. Was he in the brass band there? No. Was he in the choir? No. Was he active in the trade union? No. Was he active in the Labour Party? No. Is that a pigeon loft out there? Did he keep pigeons? No. He's getting desperate now, and I said, see, you've got a dog in the corner there. What's his name? It's Rover. What breed is he? He's a mongrel. He's half lab and half retriever. And so did your husband, was he in the habit of taking the dog out for a walk? Oh, he went to about 9 o'clock every night. You could set your clock by him. And he went up to, I think he went up to the pub actually. I think just was an excuse to go to the pub. Which pub did you go to? The King's Head. So I'd go up to the King's Head and I'd ask the landlord if he knew this fellow. He was a bit vague about it, you know. One of the customers would say, oh, it's that bloke who comes in and sits there, has one pint for 10 minutes and says nout. So I said, so he doesn't say anything. Well, you know, he keeps himself to himself. He once made a joke about the weather. And so then you get back to the office and you say, you know, the regulars at the Rose and Crown in Slavinsky Street were this week mourning their friend Harry O'Connor. You know, yes, he used to be. You set your clock by him. He'd come in here every night at 9 o'clock with his dog. You know, nice half lab, half retriever. And so was he good company? Oh, aye. He had a very good joke about the weather one time. So I once said rather pompously that if people didn't have a life, I gave them a life. That was a very pompous, silly thing to say, but I can be pompous at times. It was very good training, you know, in having. I mean, my one of my competitors in Britain, Roger Protz, has written some very nice things about me, and in one of his pieces he wrote about my having an eye for detail, and that's you've sure learned that writing obituaries for people who did nothing with their lives.
One thing I really appreciate about what you do is that you're always working for accuracy, and
Well,
like
yeah,
a lawyer.
I make goofs like anybody else does, but I
Well,
certainly try not to.
and that's a journalist sort of thing, not a lawyer's kind of thing, but
Yeah, well, I mean, there are in the world of drinks writers, there are drinks writers who came somewhere from the drinks industry, and there are drinks writers who came from journalism, and I'm very much one who came from journalism. I've never left journalism. I mean, I was at a family funeral the other day, and I met this woman, and she said, "Oh, I used to be a journalist. I'm an ex-journalist." I said, "There's no such thing as an ex-journalist. A recovering journalist, perhaps, you know, but an ex-journalist. You can't be. If you've got the printer's ink in your blood, it's there to stay."
is it also partly being a bit of an amateur anthropologist or something when you're a journalist?
If you're a journalist, you know, you can be a private detective one day, nailing somebody who's, you know, blowing the whistle on somebody. You can be Clarence Darrow the next day. You can be Hemingway one day. You can be a stand-up comedian the next day. And you're licensed to do all this stuff. You're licensed to stick your nose into other people's business, which everybody loves doing. I mean, in my first year in journalism, I was stabbed with a bread knife, beaten up, had a few similar sort of casualties.
Where you were born, was it a small town in Yorkshire, or were you in...
Well, I was born in a big town by European standards, Leeds. Leeds is a very Jewish city. Lots of Lithuanians and Poles live there, and my grandparents were from Lithuania. When I was pretty young, we moved to the next town, which was a smaller town. I mean, it was, today the move would be nothing, but it was like, say, going from Boston to, what's it called?
Lowell? Or...
Yeah, like Lowell, Massachusetts. I think it reminds me, Huddersfield, where I grew up, reminded me most of Lowell, Massachusetts, and it was a similar distance from Leeds that Lowell is from Boston, but you know, it's culturally very different. For one thing, there were no Jews in Huddersfield. There were plenty of Poles, but they're all Catholics. And my dad used to send me to the Polish deli to get rye bread. And when you got these pictures of Jesus with stigmata and everything, you know, quite scary. I mean, you know, the only bit of sort of excitement colour I'd ever had in the synagogue was when my grandfather had to blow the shofar horn once, you know, blow down the walls of Jericho. It was a big deal. He's going to blow his horn, you know, the ram's horn. But the Catholics had all this. I had this friend Timmy O'Brien who was always telling me about purgatory and limbo and all this sort of stuff. And my mother said, you know, who told you? I was telling my mother very earnestly about limbo and purgatory and the difference between them. She said, who told you that stuff? I said, Timmy O'Brien. She went to Timmy O'Brien's mum and gave her hell, you know. Don't you fill my boy's brain with all this religious unpleasantness.
But your mother wasn't Jewish.
No, she wasn't. No, she was.
Which technically means that you're not Jewish.
Well, yeah. It's try telling that to Hitler. I mean, I don't know. Perhaps it's wrong to give Hitler the casting vote, but you know, if the Cossacks come to Hammersmith, which I said they have come, but they're mainly just delivering pizzas. But if the Cossacks come and sack the village, I'm out of here. I'm not going to wait to say, oh, no, it's quite all right. My mother was an Anglo. That's fine. Okay, good. Fine, carry on. I mean,
It doesn't work.
wouldn't have worked very well on Crystal Nut, I don't think. So I'm not taking any chances.
Your father's name was...
We don't really know. My dad called himself Jackson. He and his brothers, during the war, he didn't want to be going around with a long foreign name of any description.
But it seems like I saw something in one of your books.
Well,
dedication to your
I
father
took
with
a spelling that was in immigrants who come from a bad place, they don't want to talk about the bad place. They're left for a good reason. And I used to try and talk to him, and it's like, you're the one whose mother's a shiksa, and why do you want to know all this stuff anyway? I'll tell you what he'd say. You should be really proud. I should be proud what of? Your great grandfather was Lord Mayor of Moscow. Well, he obviously wasn't. This is just his. So go away and shut up, you see. And one day he gave me this big greasy manila envelope. So look, don't ask me any more questions. Just look through this envelope, and when you finish looking through it, bring it back to me. There was every document from his life in there. There was his joining the British Army, being discharged from the army, being fined for cruelty to his horse, getting married, a whole lot of stuff, and every one of these documents had a different name on it. It's the Ellis Island thing, I mean, if they hadn't been Jewish people, if they hadn't been immigrants, probably they wouldn't have been able to read anyway, because people of that age and background couldn't read and write anyway. But some guy asks him, what's your name? He says what his name is, and the guy can't quite figure it out, writes down Drakovich. And the next one is Starkovich, Jakovovich. They're all different. Every document has a different name on it. And that's how most Americans got their names. Well, maybe not most, but a great many. If you're black, they call him Michael Jackson because it's it's Andrew Jackson, and or it's a slave name or whatever, or it's not a slave name. So in this country, it's very much the same. It was always difficult for me when I first spent a lot of time in America. Americans would talk to me about Britain, where they have cups of tea all the time. Americans are very nice people, very generous, very kind, very hospitable. They keep saying, would you like a cup of tea? No thanks, I'll have coffee if you don't mind. You sure you wouldn't like some tea? You think I'm saying, look, I don't want any goddamn tea. I don't drink tea. I don't take a break in the middle of the afternoon for tea. And yes, I know you drive on the other side. I've noticed. Actually, I'm so confused I can't remember what side anybody drives on.
You don't drive.
No.
Have you ever driven?
I had a motor scooter when I was a teenager. I used to drink a lot. I got picked up by the police and very drunk, and astonishingly, they didn't prosecute me. And that same week, 2 buddies of mine were killed, drunk and driving. So I said I wasn't going to drink and drive. So I haven't driven since.
You chose drinking over driving.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Good choice.
Not that I ever drank very much. I drank a great deal when I was in my teens and early 20s, but after that, I've never drunk very much. I love the stuff. Love the taste of it. I don't really like being drunk.
When you talk about liking the taste of things, but not like being drunk, does that inform what you like to do? You like beers that aren't too strong?
I like strong beers too, but I'm interested in the taste more than anything else. The overall package I'm interested in, but drink is about taste. I always thought. I could never understand it when people I guess there's something here about it.
Beer,
If you can't taste it, why bother? I think it says. I got a bit lost in my
yeah.
the folds of my
Have to
ample.
straighten it out. But at some point, you began to write about drinking, but not just drinking, but good things to drink. And
Yeah, I tried on the local paper, a local weekly, and I did manage to do a series with one of the other reporters. We were friends. We collaborated on the series. I went to the editor. I said to the editor, "I've got this great idea." You know, he said, "Oh yes, what's that, lad?" I said, "I would like to write a series called This Is Your Pub." He said, "Jackson boy, how old are you?" 16, sir. You're not old enough to go in pubs, are you? Yeah, we're the newspaper of this town. We deal with the police, we deal with the council, and you're asking me to give you the money to buy the drink with us. But yes, sir. So you're asking me to finance you on a law-breaking escapade. I said, yes. He said, I like your style. That's the kind of reporters we want. So we did this series, and there are about 50 pubs in the town, and 50 weeks in a year. And then he called me and said, you know, I thought I have some doubts about this series, but it's done very well. They'd buy 6 copies, you know, to send one to their auntie who'd emigrated to Winnipeg, and another one to their son-in-law who was working in Arkansas, you know, and somebody else who'd moved to Australia. They'd send them copies of the paper with pictures of them in their local pub. So he said, well, I'd like you to know, I've got another idea for you. I'd like you to do a piece on This Is Your Church. So I moved to a bigger paper at that point.
but did you find interest in all those pubs?
Oh yeah, it's no problem, you know.
And it wasn't obviously just the beer. I mean, I imagine in those days, well, maybe not, but they were tied houses that didn't have much.
Yeah, well,
They're all the same.
people didn't talk about the beers. That was the thing.
And did you avoid that entirely, or did you just talk about the life of the
Well,
pub?
I was very interested in why the beers all tasted different. And ales do tend to taste have bigger differences than lagers too.
There's a wider range in ales.
Well, the top fermenting yeasts, you know, leaves more flavours in the beer. So because there are more flavours, you can therefore have a wider range of differences, even if they're just sort of standard products. And yeah, I mean, people talked about beer, but it was, you know, I had to go to that coal mine disaster in Barnsley. I had some Barnsley bitter. That's great beer. No, you don't drink that stuff. You know, Leeds and Tetleys, that's really good beer. Oh, no. Bradford. Hayes beer. Obi Joyful from Blackburn. Great beer. But they just say it was great beer, you know. It was the legends about how strong it was or how dark it was, but nobody knew anything really about beer, and the brewers didn't tell you anything.
Certainly, nobody talked about flavors of black currant.
No, definitely not. No.
Kiwi.
I attempt to describe flavours, certainly. I mean, I was the first writer to do that, really. Both beer and whiskey.
But for beer, yeah, not obviously wine. People were doing that.
Yes, right. But I was the first person to do it for beer.
But that's kind of what I want to get at. It seems to me that you may have been the first person to treat beer as a serious discipline. If
Well,
you
I
will.
mean, Canberra did it for British beer, but in my feeling was this is a very good thing that they're doing. But what about beers in other countries? What about threatened traditions in other countries? And so I really made much more of an effort to try to, first of all, to try to map the beers of the world, and then to try to distinguish them from each other. And you know, I occasionally get a bad rap for this. People say I invented certain styles; they just didn't exist. Saison didn't exist. You invented it. You imagined it. Well, I didn't. There were a few people nosing around doing odd bits on beer, and I read something that somebody had written about Berliner Weiss beer, and he said it tasted like his Aunt Mary's cider, celery wine or something. And I thought, well, maybe it did. If you thought that all beer should taste like Bud, then you had a Berliner Weiss beer, it might taste like celery wine. What you have to understand is it's not meant to taste like Bud. So I would try to say what this beer should taste like, and then of course people say you're being a beer fascist or something. It didn't say that at first because nobody ever really attempted to say what beer should taste like. That's what I was trying to do with beer. I was trying to say, well, it doesn't have to all taste like Bud, and the only alternative to Bud isn't Guinness. There are all sorts of things out there, but they won't be out there much longer if we don't take some interest in them. I got a bad rap from Camera some years ago for writing. I was writing in the Independent, which is a national newspaper, and I wrote a piece about Leffe beers. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't say they were great beers, certainly not, but I said they were a bit more interesting than Stella Artois, for example. And at the end of this piece, a little box story saying, if you try Leffe beers and you like them, maybe you should try some Trappist beers. Here are the half dozen brewers, and hear what they make, and just a little box story. So people say, why do you write about Leffe? Because there's a whole bunch of people, you suddenly get it widely, a whole bunch of people who've never gone anywhere beyond Stella, and they might be persuadable to drink Leffe, and once they do that, they've broken the prison of it has to be golden lager, and I do give them information where to go next if they want to. I'll hold my head up high and stand by my record, and people can come and smack my face for writing about some not such interesting products, but it's made it possible for me to write about some very interesting products. And it's always been hard to, right from the beginning. I mean, it was, you want to write about what? Lambic, what's that? Oh. Microbrewed beer. You ever been smoking dope again, Michael? We published that piece you wrote about some jazz head who's got some weird pub somewhere in a cinder block building in a dangerous part of town, So do us a favour, write something about, at least mention Heineken in your stories.
Do you think at this point that people in general are ready to move ahead and hear about more obscure things, as they are with wine, for
moving,
example?
I mean, there's some people are moving from Stella to Leffe, some people are moving from Leffe to Orval, some people are moving from Orval to, the two guys who made that beer called Bitter.
Nino and XX Bitter, yeah.
I can't just go out to spend my whole life telling people about some great new beer from Belgium. I've done a lot of that. I won't stop doing it. I'll still do it, but I need to write other stuff. If people get on my case about what I should be writing about and stuff, I look up there. I wrote all those books. I think I paid my dues. I don't really feel accountable to anybody. I still piss people off from time to time, probably more than ever because I say, all suddenly say something quite mean to somebody who's pissed me off, and it's I never was quite the cuddly pussycat that people sometimes depicted me as. There's always some needles inside that soft toy. It's not my responsibility to carry the whole show like this. And my writing has always evolved, always developed, and I'm writing much more stuff now about people and about my family and about political issues and so forth. not in conventional political journalism, but you know, I mean, who's going to say to me, "Well done, Michael Jackson, for persuading an intellectual foodie magazine in Italy to run a story about rugby league"? That's my greatest achievement of recent years, and that's that story and there's a number of others that they've run in slow food in Italy. They're part of what will eventually be a novel, and it'll look at a lot of social and political issues I hope I'm making it sound boring, aren't I?
No, not yet.
I hope I hope people will find it interesting. That sounds a feeble, or stupid thing to say. I hope people find it interesting. See, I'm getting tired now.
Yeah.
I mean, not sort of tired, wrecked, but just tired. I need some pierogies and some beetroot.
I was
borscht.
about to say maybe it's time to walk down the street.
I just feel like I gabble and mumble and you know, I don't. It doesn't make it easy for people to understand. I write the way I write, and at this point, people can take it or leave it. I love writing. I really love it. It's a great job. Okay, we're all ready to rock and roll.
So you were playing basketball in December.
Yeah. Shortly after my alleged heart attack in Denver. Probably wasn't the wisest thing to do, but
Well, how has the Parkinson's progressed? Has it been worse in the recent months, or?
I think it has. Yeah, I think it is getting worse. But my doctors are very take the opposite view. I mean, it's quite interesting. You know, people. I mean, you know how you sort of feel in yourself, and you know things that you're very unhappy about or worried about. Then I have this nurse called Pauline. She's a specialist. This is not my house cleaner, Pauline. Is it? Not another Pauline. She's a specialist in Parkinson's. And she said to me, and she said, "You say that you're getting worse. She said, you've been sitting in this hospital bed, hammering at that keyboard all day long, and you must have written about 2,000 words. You know," she said, "when I first knew you couldn't really, you're having increasing difficulty operating a keyboard." Well, when she said that, I realized that both those statements were true. The more Paddy and I talk about it, the more I think that what a long time I must have had it without before I really realised, you know. I mean, it was diagnosed 10 years ago.
You mentioned you were thinking about doing something about having Parkinson's.
I definitely want to do that, yeah. I want to do a book called I Am Not Drunk.
That's a pretty catchy title, I guess
Yeah.
you would say.
No.
Yeah, so you've actually had people pointing out to you that they thought, wow, this guy is.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people were saying it, you know, wondering whether I had a problem or not. So I think it's a very good title, and
Yeah, I think so.
I write it with a bit of humour, you see, which is not an easy trick to write a book about a nasty disease with some humour, but
And you say
I can do that, you know.
it's 10 years.
Well, it's 10 years since I was diagnosed. I think I've had it more like 20 years, really. I didn't want people to, you know, think, well, I can't give him any work because he might not deliver it, you know. But the word was going around that I had a problem.
But not the problem you actually have.
No, that's right, yeah. It can seem irrelevant like that. I mean, I can have slurred speech and staggering around a lot. It can be a bit of a problem hailing a taxi in London, you know, because if they think you're drunk, then I think, oh, we don't want any trouble with this guy. And sometimes I'll be just standing on the sidewalk, hail a cab, and I know I'm rocking about a bit, you know.
Was it that those things getting back to you that caused you to finally want to say, you know,
Yeah, but then
I have this problem?
I was visibly ill at the Great American last year too. It's strange, you see, because one minute I could not walk, next minute I could run. So I was signing books, and I was if I need to go and take a leak, I don't want to be people trying to get me to sign their books. I'm trying to take a leak, you know. So I had a guy from the beer club was escorting me to the John. So one time I went to the John and suddenly my legs go. He almost has to carry me back. I'm looking dreadful. And Steve Berman and Tom Daldorf were there. They see me looking like I'm about to die, you know. Take some more pills. Half an hour later, I'm fine. They've gone by then, probably. Next night, I'm in Falling Rock with Carol, and I'm feeling good. And the guy who owns Falling Rock,
Chris Black.
yeah, who I've known since he was down in Austin, he's there, and there's some jazz playing, and there's boxing on TV, and some good Belgian beers, and people are saying how nice it is to see me, and I'm feeling great, you know. Very confusing for people.
It could seem like you just had a few one night and the next night you're okay, sort of thing, I guess.
But
the nature of the thing is obviously that it comes and goes, and it's worse sometimes. And
yeah. It's also hard to, I mean, for one thing, the medication keeps changing, because your body very quickly ceases to be fooled by the medication, but also they keep developing new stuff. And they've been really very into, because I appear to be a good patient. I'm not a good patient about being ill in general at all, but you know, because I'm
not very patient about being ill.
yeah, I'm terrible about that, but they keep giving me new stuff to try, and I can seem like a different person depending on whatever drug I'm taking, and that's not really my style, because as a Yorkshireman I'm sort of quite decisive and stubborn, and have a clear mind about it, who I am and what I do. And those things are a problem. I over-medicated during the Great American. It's very easy to do that. It's very tempting if you're going to be seeing lots of people, you're going to be in a very public situation. It's very tempting to take too much medication. And so just to make sure, you know, I'm not going to suddenly crash, you know. And it's, of course, huge problems if you do that. There are other books out there on Parkinson, but what would be distinctive about this one is, first of all, it's by a professional writer who has a problem. It's a first-person story, and it has this angle of the fact that I'm a drinks writer. If I'm careful how I balance the ingredients, I get some of my funny stuff in there. I'll probably be quite painfully honest about things. Yeah? Yes. Nostrovi. The ham. Freeze frame, roll closing credits. Yeah. That's how it was a film by Michael Jackson.